Yeah.
Kendra, hello. How are you?
Utilize your time, huh? Don't we all do that? I don't know how well, but
Hello. For those of you who haven't eaten yet, there's some pastries up front. Edwin was kind enough to make chocolate chip cookies. I don't know what else they are. Hello, hello. Oh, the class was canceled yesterday.
It was? No.
Elliot, 16?
I've seen that.
Single? Hello?
Also follow it up, Professor, with the single ready to mingle. Yeah. Ready to mingle.
Yes. Next week, I'll remember.
Yeah, single ready to mingle. That type of thing. This is like Christian mingle. Or like this class could be like a religious type of like Christian mingle, like Taoism mingle.
You talk too much.
I know my dad told me that too when I was younger, and I still don't believe him. No.
No, you should.
Nah, he says it all.
Have you sought help?
No.
Well, you should.
Internally,
Ah, please.
yeah, because I don't believe in that other stuff.
So, is there anything you guys want to talk about? Any questions out there? I'm looking at this direction.
Me.
What is it now? Elliot.
You spoke about Taoism last night, and it was pretty interesting. And you talked about like transcending. Can you speak about like nirvana?
No.
Why?
Who cares?
Who cares about nirvana? I think it's important.
Well, you can Google it then.
Your thoughts.
Yeah, we can talk about Nirvana
Okay.
next week,
Okay.
maybe. Yeah.
That works if I were remember. I got it right now.
Yeah. If I remember too. Yeah. E, anything? You sure? How about like a tiny question? Like really, really tiny. If you were able to. Nothing comes to mind? If something was to come to mind, what would that be? Yeah. Yeah.
Don't let me start asking some more questions.
E, help us. Yeah, right.
So, are we gonna have class Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or is it just the
For 3 days in a row? No, we'll have some conversation on Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then you guys can get together and have pizza on Thursday. Anyone else? Yeah.
So you know how people, I feel like it's become more popular now with people are into like tarot cards and like stuff like that. Is that based in like a religion that's people kind of finding things to make sense of the world?
There is a zodiac, astrology, tarot, personality types, hidden meaning behind names that dates all the way back to ancient Egypt. Is there science to them? I suppose so, to some extent. How does one put this in a way that's sensible? She wants to go see a psychic.
I don't want to see.
No, we're just kidding.
I mean, I do, but not.
You do?
I just want to see like what they would say.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, some people think it's real, right? So, is there any like, basis?
Hello.
Hi.
So,
Yeah. Doesn't it sound like black magic or something?
it could be considered as that.
Yeah, it's not real. You know, nobody.
I think that perhaps the bigger question would be not the question, but the problem. There was a time in my life where I bought every book that I could afford about names, you know. So, should you ever visit my house, there is like a huge section of books just about names. The next phase had to do with astrology. I was fascinated, you know, which house does the sun enter? Which house does the sun leave? What's the impact of the moon? Each house represents what exactly, what type of emotions. The next phase was the Enneagram, which was, and you know, there is the Indian type, the Chinese type. That has to do with, you know, there are like all these different personality types. Which one do I fit in? And then there is numerology, where the alphabets from, you assign each of them a number from 0 to, or not 0, from 1 to 9. And then you have master numbers. And then you try to put together your first name, your last name. And of course, you have to figure out when you were born, what time, where. And I think all these fascinations that we have with these things, they have to do with the fact that we are in such a difficult place in life. Maybe you can call it magical place in life, where perhaps we're the only animals that are so uncertain about who and what they are and what they ought to do in the few days that they're alive. And we are desperately seeking meaning in an environment where meaning doesn't really exist. I mean, when you think about it for a moment, third world countries, they're in so much pain, they're in so much poverty, and yet they get the floods, and yet they get the earthquakes, and they get the most devastating elements of life. And sometimes you sit back and you wonder, well, why not in America? I mean, sure, we have, our own portion, but not to such devastation. And you're trying to figure things out, why did my husband leave me? Why do I have cancer? Why did my child die so early in life? There are just so many questions that we have, and life doesn't really provide us answers. And so we have no choice but out of desperation create magic. One magic is religion, and it's a fascinating world of ideas where it tries to explain why we're down here, what our purpose is, you know, why you should forgive, when you should forgive. And so I think all these sciences, they have some merit. I mean, there is a stage in your life where you're looking for someone, and this is an interesting part. Let's say you go somewhere and you have high hopes, and you've heard some things about this particular person, that they are in fact a genuine psychic. To some extent, they can see your past, they can see where you are right now, both inwardly and outwardly, and to some extent, they can predict your future. There is this fascination that we have about how is my future going to turn out? Am I going to retire? Am I going to have a stroke in the middle of the class while I'm talking? Am I going to die in my sleep? I'd like to know the answer to those questions. Sometimes it could be profoundly frightening. I remember my mom, they had gone to San Diego. We had a friend, she was a nurse at Kaiser many, maybe 3-4 decades ago. And they were quite privileged. They went to San Diego, saw a psychic. And that psychic told my mom how my father was going to die. Okay. And it felt so true and so real for my mom that on the drive back to Sacramento, she just threw the tape cassette out the window because she just didn't want to think about it. That because the future is unknown for us, and because life is so frightening and scary, and because we have no idea really where we're going, what we're doing, we want to have some clues. So one of the ways that you test a psychic, I think most of us do it this way, is that you pay attention to how much they know of your past and how accurate they are. Sometimes you do so because you're too scared looking at the past. There are just too many things. And you're hoping that this psychic, in a very subtle way, kind of like last night we talked about thief at night, can kind of bring some of the most important elements out and say, A, B, C, D lived in your past. Today you're going through E, F, G, H. 5 years from now, 2 years from now, X, Y, Z will happen. So, you want to know if you're going to get married, if you're going to have children, if you're going to stay in Oakland, if you're going to die a natural death or be overcome by a disease. I mean, these are important questions, and these are important things that you want to know and you should know. And so, we just try to become as intimate with these sciences as possible because they do provide some answers that comfort us. They may be all delusional, they may all be ridiculous, but nevertheless, for that moment in time. Now, what usually happens is, let's say you go see a psychic and he or she tells you A, B, C, D. They may use tarot cards, they may use palm readings, whatever the case may be. And for the next few hours, a few days, a few weeks, you'll kind of just mull over these ideas and maybe a few things will come true. But then somehow your own biology and your own psychic energy will force you to kind of snap out of it, and you'll just once again be pushed back into real stuff of life. And those sciences will no longer matter as much unless your entire life revolves around those sciences. Going back to Rochelle's question last night, my life for the past, 50 years or so, it has just revolved around these ideas. I haven't had much exposure to other things, and I don't think I've missed much in life. It has been a relatively rich life. If your life revolves around tarot, there's a good chance that most of your friends will be readers of that particular science. Most of your relationships will revolve around that. Most of your conversations will revolve around that. The way you will, kind of like feng shui, the way you will situate your house. So, and it's not because these sciences have any reality to them, or maybe they do it to some extent, but if it works for you, then it works for you. There have been lots of really, really interesting people who have experimented with these things. P.D. Auspinski was one. What's his name? There's a guy who wrote this History of Sex, which is an enormously fascinating book. It's filled with mythology and religion and the occult. Viola something. He has like, a thick, fat book about the tarot cards. So there are lots of things out there that could vie your attention, and they are interesting. Just consider you go home and you want to figure out who you are. Well, maybe the Bible can't answer that for you, but you pick up a book on numerology, for example. Emilia, A is 1, M is like, I don't know, 5. And then you add the numbers together to get to a single digit. and they can entertain you for the next like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And again, it is because we know so little. And life is so dangerous in many ways. And we want as much power as we possibly can accumulate so we can kind of control our environment. Next time you find yourself interested in a man, what you should do is, get to know the tarot cards a little bit, how to read them, and then buy yourself one from Amazon. If the answers you get from the cards are not very satisfactory, go to numerology, figure out what his name is, what his last name is, the date of his birth, and the time of his birth, and then put all of them together, and then, go somewhere in quiet and ask yourself if it's a match. You put the numbers together, It's like the question that she asked, what's your zodiac sign? It's a way to kind of capture the essence of another human being, which is relatively impossible. But it's a good try nevertheless.
I like to look at them just to see their character and the way they how creative they are.
When I've gotten my cards read once, when I was in high school, by a counselor or whatever, and she says some things, and I just sometimes I think back and I'm like, oh, I guess some of it did kind of, and I don't want to say come true, but like those kind of apply. So I'm just
If your spidey senses work well and you protect them and nourish them, a good portion of your own future can be revealed to you in dreams. But that means, your mental space has to be pretty tranquil and your life has to be in, relative harmony and other things. But yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Are religions just cults?
They start as a cult. So what you have is a very, very, very charismatic figure who is mysterious in a lot of different ways, and for good reasons, because they have something that the rest of us don't have, and we can feel that. It's not like you go somewhere, you read a book to figure these people out. Just the way they are, their body language, their facial expressions, the way they speak, what they speak about and how they speak about those things. There is something about them that captures us, okay? And then, like many times we've talked about in this class, they are nothing but billboards, advertisements. And any human being is out there, has no choice but to sell whatever it is that they have. That's how we survive, and so they go around and they look for buyers of what they have to sell or what they have inside. And out of 20, 30, 40, 50 people that they talk to, maybe 5 become very interested and very attracted to what they have to sell. And so out of the 5 or 10 that begin to hang out with this particular person, 5 will have genuine interest. They'll be brainwashed. And it's not a negative or a bad term. In other words, your brain right now is filled with the hustle and bustle of life. The past, the present, the future, all the fears. And so what they do is, because of their personality and because of just who and what they are, they have the power to kind of go inside you and somehow baptize your brain. They brainwash you. And once your brain has been cleansed or baptized, they begin to gradually, little by little, inject ideas into it. And it's not like they inject ideas. You basically take them and you mimic them. As we've talked about in this class, there is something about these people that are very attractive to us. They inspire us for whatever the reasons may be. They bring a part of us to life. And so those 5 or 10 people begin to just hang out with that particular person. And then the ideas will just grow. And the 5 people will tell their friends, 5 all of a sudden becomes 10, 10 becomes 15. Now, everybody wants to mimic someone like Malcolm X or Jesus Christ, but these are people who are not reachable. We don't know who they are and what they are. All we know is that they have magic inside them, and when you're around them, they contaminate you, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. It's like when you sit and watch a really, really good movie and you walk away in a somber mood. Or my father, who doesn't speak English, even though he's been here for about 40, 50 years, we were watching Malcolm X, this is like 30, 40 years ago when the movie first came out. And even though this man doesn't speak English and doesn't really know what the hell is going on, when he got shot on the stage, my father just sat and cried in front of all of us. So, and you realize that there are people who are like movies, some characters like Al Pacino. They have the power to kind of do something to us. And I don't know how they do it, but they do it nevertheless. And so that tiny person, okay, now that person injects him or herself into 5 people. Those 5 people have friends, and little by little, the size of the community grows. And they become a cult, And cults are usually very secretive, and for good reasons. Some cult leaders are secretive simply because they really do have wisdom, and they know the dangerousness of wisdom, and so they keep it in-house. Some, they just want followers. The televangelists. Who's the famous one right now in Texas? Joel Osteen. Hundreds of thousands of people occupy this church every Sunday, and it's a pretty booming business. And now his son, who's not even 30, has taken over. He's like 25, 26, a young punk who doesn't know anything about anything, and yet he preaches. And so what happens is someone like Jesus dies, but his message lives on, and his message happens to be pretty powerful. And then you need some very forceful advertisements. It's like you blitz the public over and over and over and over again. And before you know it, everybody's a Christian. And then you have some emperor or some ruler or someone with a tremendous amount of power. And all of a sudden says, you know what? Imagine if Trump was to come on TV and say, most of the things I'm doing have to do with tarot cards. And all the mega followers, they'll begin to buy tarot cards, and Amazon will run out of them. That's how it starts. One single person has the power to create a blaze. Any one else?
Have you ever been a part of a cult?
Yes. A small one and a big one.
What are they?
One was Scientology. I was there for about 6 months. Quite interesting. You get to a place where they trust you enough to put you in a room. It's all white with a single chair right in the middle of the room. You sit there for about 8 hours, but you can't make any physical movements. You just sit there for 8 hours. Everything is white. And regardless of what you may think of that particular organization, the very fact that you're interested enough to subject yourself and your body and your mind and your emotions, and there are lots of things that begin to come and harass you, emotions, memories from the past. You begin to be very doubtful as to why you're doing, all these things. But, you summon up the stamina and the courage to kind of just continue with the exercise for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. That in itself is good. Again, regardless of what you may think of it. It doesn't matter whether Jesus exists or not. The very fact that someone slaps you in the right cheek and you offer the left, that's commendable. That you have purchased someone else's idea from 2,000 years ago, you apply it to your life, and you actually get to a place where you enjoy what you have done and who you've become. The other was, it had its root in Iran. And it started with a teacher who migrated from Iran to Natomas. Is that what the city called? Natomas? An hour from here. And then now it's grown to a huge, huge, huge organization. They have centers in Canada and Australia, England, and of course America. So yeah. But I think your question is, Elijah, very similar to Amelia's question in regards to tarot. Why does someone read a self-help book? Why does someone read the Bible? Why does someone go to school? Why does someone join a cult? And I think all of us are looking for answers to various issues or various dilemmas that entertain us, engage us, Some people come to realize that, they wasted a lot of time and now they want to go back to school. And what they do is they go to the third floor, talk to a counselor, figure out the ins and outs and how they can graduate. They have questions. They've come to realize a few things. And they're not where they want to be, And so someone who joins a cult, what does that mean? Well, my parents don't have much to give me. My relatives don't have much to give me. My friends don't have much to give me. I hate the way life, has been put together. I hate my job. I hate society. Why don't I go somewhere? It's no different than a monastery that was very popular in the medieval times. So, consider the following. In the medieval times, families used to give one of their kids to the monastery. Part of it had to do with the fact that food was very scarce, poverty was everywhere, and so if you can get rid of one of your children, send them to a monastery. Monastery is always a safe place. They always have food, and it's like a cult. You always have friends, and just in case you get sick, you have tons of people helping you, taking care of you. But why do you give your child to a monastery? Well, you go back to Abraham. God demanded Abraham to give up his son, and eventually he did, right? And so that has been a tradition, that just in case you have this intuitive feeling that you should give one of your children to God, that's what you do. You give it to the monastery. You don't grab a dagger to try to cut his jugular, you just give it to the monastery or to a nunnery. Vane, yes. Good job. Elliot. Excellent. Joyce. Nico. Nothing? Kendra? It basically means going back to your roots. That's what it means. Or going back home. But it has a going back to a certain place that for many, many thousands of years for us have been named as the Garden of Eden or Paradise Lost or the Sabbath, a resting place. Because this is a place of just engagement and movement all the time. If you go back to one of the verses in the Gospels, the birds have the trees, that's where they can rest. The foxes have the earth, that's where they can rest. But son of humanity, in the old version it would be son of man, but now it's son of humanity. So men and women, all sorts of different denominators can kind of join in. Son of humanity has no place to rest his head. So there is something about us that is restless. And that's the most devastating part, which is you have a boyfriend, you're happy, but for the time being, time passes and all of a sudden you once again become restless and you begin to notice your eyes. You know, you begin to like look there and look there and look there, trying to look for something that will excite you, bring you back to life, you know. And so religion has this set of ideas that says if you follow some of the teachings existing, say Buddhism or Judaism or Islam, then your restlessness will cease. You know, you will spend, at least psychologically, 80% of your time in the Garden of Eden, 20% down here in the world of Caesar, where you get pushed around by people and by life itself. But eventually, because you have access to Sabbath, you're not going to be traumatized. You're not going to get all bloodied up. You don't need therapy because Sabbath is your resting place. You can always go back home. If that's a little difficult to grasp, think of it this way. For whatever reasons and whatever your intentions are for being in this class tonight, I mean, it's a tough job, you know. You work from 9 to 5. Then you have to take a class because you need to up your salary or you need to finish school, whatever the case may be. When this class is over at 8:30, you go to the place where you woke up this morning, which is home. You know, so you wake up, you do all the stuff, and at the end, you go back to the place from which you exited. That's what religion is. You know. For some, it could be a temporary place. You know, it's like you guys can be interested in this stuff for just the 6 weeks of this class. And for some, it could last longer. Maybe you can entertain yourself with these ideas for about 2 years. For some, you know, you say, I'm just going to change my major to philosophy, humanities, and religious studies and see what happens. And you'll get your bachelor's and your master's and your PhD. And before you know it, your entire life for the next like 30, 40, 50 years revolves around these ideas and expressing these ideas to students or to your friends, whatever. And I think eventually all of us in this class are looking for a home. We have our physical home. The problem is the psychological, intellectual home is very, very difficult to find. That's why romanticism is such a huge thing. We can rest in the image and the physical presence of another human being, and that's profoundly comforting. The problem with that is that it only lasts for about maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, you know. And even though we feel as if the relationship perhaps may have outlived its usefulness, you know, we talk about marriage and we talk about buying a house and buying a car and having children. And before you know it, you're like 70. And by the time you realize everything has been a joke, you know, a nice joke, and you want to make some changes, your body's too old, emotionally you're exhausted, you know, and you just kind of just give up. And you're content with, you know, your lot in life. Elliot, yes. Still no? Brett?
This might be like going off, but if the afterlife were to be true, or a reincarnation, like you just go up and then get sent back down, then would what we perceive as free will or choice, would that just be enough if we were to go back in time? Like,
You have to forgive me. Yeah, I can go there. If you were to simply ask about reincarnation, that would be interesting. But free will, predestination, all those things, you have to take a philosophy class, and you have to have a very, very specific instructor who enjoys those mind games. Unfortunately, that's not my forte. Sorry. Anyone else? It's a great question. Don't get yes, serenity. Sorry? What does that mean?
You know what that is?
No, I haven't watched Oprah Winfrey in such a long time.
What was the question? I barely hear you guys.
Manifestation.
Oh, manifestation.
Let me see if I can get this right. I am single. I go home. I close my eyes. I picture a woman, very beautiful, like Angelina Jolie, Miley Cyrus, and Beyonce put together. Okay? Well, hold on. And then once I create this perfect image, then I wait for this image to knock on my door and say, "Hi, here I am." Yeah? No. And you shouldn't either. It doesn't. If there is something you're passionate about and it consumes you and engages you and and it won't leave you alone, you have no choice but to keep fantasizing about it, you know. And eventually there will be a huge highway right in the middle of your brain. In other words, you have a good amount of neurons just focused on that particular set of images. And that's the thing you want to do. That's how you see yourself 10 years or 20 years from now. I mean, most of the people in this classroom right now, they're doing exactly what you just suggested. You know, especially the older folks in this room, which is they've always wanted to go to school. They always want to graduate. They came to a place of plateau. It's just flat land. And they said, you know what? This is what I dreamt of about 10 years ago. Maybe I should go pursue it. And now they're taking classes. The problem with whatever it is that you're imagining is that at a certain point, it demands hard work. You have to come to class. If you want to get to where you want to be in 10 years' time or whatever your fantasies are, fantasies by themselves are not going to do anything. You have to make sacrifices. And the things you sacrifice are your time, are your energy, and sometimes you even have to sacrifice your fantasy. This class is not fun. This class is not boring. Yet, you have to come to this class. You have to participate. You have to do the crummy essays. You have to get a stupid letter grade so that you can get an inch closer to your fantasy. But while you're in this class, fantasy has no place in it. Just real work, hard work. Look at the boxers, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. These are all like tiny little kids who dreamt big. But being in the ring for 6, 7 hours and just watching tapes of great boxers, that's no fun. The idea of sitting on your ass and just fantasizing, nothing's going to happen.
It kind of goes off of her question with the audios that you sent. One of them is like a conversation with
Right.
person like that, and they made, I guess the person said, you kind of have to look at life and like, I guess, thank life or thank God as if you already have whatever it is that you want. Is that kind of like manifesting the other side of the saying, oh, like don't pray for it, basically, like just say, oh, thank you God for giving me X, Y, Z. And then you kind of like put the work into it and then you have it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. For those of you who may not know, I sent some audios to Matt and to Amelia. One of them happens to be Conversations with God. It's what we call automatic writing. For those of you who are interested, A Course in Miracles, which is a book that came out, I don't know, in the 1970s or so, was written the same way. So here's the thing about this book, Conversation with God, which is an extremely interesting and important book. I think everyone should read it, even if you're not religious and you like to reflect as much. It has some very, very insightful things to say. The idea of positive thinking, manifest, the secret, that has been part of the American kind of psychological food for the past maybe 20, 30 years, 40 years, okay? And this book is in the same genre, that you should be thankful, you should be grateful. I don't know how I feel about that. You know, the book is 3 volumes, and there are lots of contradictions in the book, which is normal because ideas are just, you know, they contradict one another all the time. I think these books provide an easy way out of difficulties of life. You know, I mean, look, it's one thing for a 70-year-old man to sit and read this book and say it's a good book. You're 22. These books are dangerous. There is nothing you need to be thankful for. Sure, your health is great, you know, but if you want to get to a place in life where you will have not as many regrets, let's say when you're like 40, life is going to break you plenty of times. You've already been broken a few times, but it's going to happen some more. And as you age, when you get broken, especially in a intense way, your recovery time is going to take longer. Okay. When I was 20 and I invited 20 people in my house, I will clean up the house, 2-hour rest, I would be fresh. Now, if I invite 20 people, it'll take me a week or two to kind of recuperate. I think every time life breaks you, the idea of being thankful, the idea that you don't need to pray, you don't need to worship, you don't need to ask, I think it's ridiculous. Every time you're in pain, you ask, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you ask someone for help, you know. I think as ideas go, it's a beautiful set of ideas that the book presents, you know, but I don't think you should take them to heart, you know. The other thing that you need to consider is Neil Donald Walsh, who's the author of this book. He's a drinker, he's a smoker, he's a sexer. He hasn't held a job, he hasn't been committed or responsible, you know, and he has lots of health issues. But there is magic in him in the sense that he sits, he writes, and he can lift up his pen and answers come. Every time he asks a question, you have a paragraph of a response, supposedly from God. That's great. I wish I could do that, but I can't. I don't have that gift. Okay. And then eventually he gives these notes to one of his friends, and his friend says, this is beautiful, we should publish them. And then he publishes 3 volumes over the next 10 years. Those 3 volumes have been translated into 50 different languages. He doesn't need money anymore. Fame goes after him. He doesn't go after fame. Money goes after him. He doesn't go after money. You have a guy who simply sits, asks, and writes. Set of ideas. The application of those ideas are tremendously difficult. You know, it's one thing if I was to be an alcoholic, and if you were to be my wife, well, you're going to sit me down and give me a set of bumper stickers. Amir, don't do this. Amir, it's bad. Amir, your kidneys. Amir, your liver. Amir, your heart. You may have a stroke. Our life, money, this, that. You're becoming violent. You're becoming more introverted. These are great stuff that you're telling me, and they're all true. You know, let's sit and read the Bible. I've been drinking for the past 15, 20 years. Your bumper stickers have no power over me. You know, they may make me feel guilty or bad for a minute or two, and those feelings may create a good amount of pain where I go to church and seek some help, but eventually I'll go back to the place of comfort, which is drinking. You know, the real stuff, which is overcoming my addiction, that takes hard work, and bumper stickers are not going to do it. I'm going to go through many, many relapses. Now, here's the thing that you need to, as my wife, get. That your bumper sticker will inspire me, but 10 minutes later, I'll be deflated. Do you have the capacity to forgive? Do you have the capacity to be patient? to continue with spanking me with your bumper sticker so I can maybe grow up a little bit. So I think ideas as theory, they're beautiful. Turn the other cheek, beautiful. Honor thy parents, beautiful. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, beautiful ideas. Finding a soulmate, another great idea. But in the face of life, which is harsh and brutal and uncaring, none of this stuff works. It's just hard work. I mean, most of you in this class, you work 9 to 5. Look where you are right now. You're just tired. Bumper sticker your tiredness away. It's just not going to work. You can't escape your physical body and your emotions that have been exhausted throughout the day. You come to this class and here's me ranting for like 2-3 hours. How do you escape that? You can't do it by bumper sticker. You have to keep looking at the clock, hoping that soon it'll turn to be 8:30 so you can go home and just rest. That's what it is. The only thing that you can do is find the bumper sticker. Going back to Serenity's question about manifest, find the bumper sticker that works for you, like justice for all. And if that particular bumper sticker moves you, then go to GTU, Berkeley. Get your PhD in social justice. Then teach. Or be a social activist, And then you can be around those bumper stickers your entire life. And that's a life worth living. That's a good life. Because not only are you living in theory, but you're also living in their application. And then you realize how difficult application really is of anything. Forgive my example. If I was married to someone who had a lot of issues, and every time those issues came up and those issues began to destroy the serenity of our home environment, and every time I would say, stop it, they would say, my father did this, and my mother did that, and my history did this, and the white man did that, and the black man did this. I say, fine. I mean, for the first maybe a couple of years, out of respect for all the shit they've gone through, I'll sit down, I'll kind of swallow everything they're giving me, and I say, okay, you know what? You're absolutely right. You've had a tough life. You have every right to kind of just go nuts once in a while. But the third year, I no longer have the patience or stamina. I don't give a shit what the white man did to you, man. I don't care what your husband did. I don't care what your parents did. Don't keep repeating the same story. It no longer has that effect. You know the story, find a way out of it. And so, sorry. Anyone else?
You used to play tennis, right?
I did.
You haven't played in a while.
Haven't.
Thought about pickleball?
That's just such a stupid game. Maybe,
Beat up on some
old woman.
people that
No, I'm not there yet. Maybe if I get to be 70, if I live that long, or 80, and as a form of exercise, I can get my dad, who'll be 155, take him to a court and play pickleball. Yeah. It's a very slow game. It's worse than golf. Deborah, did you have?
I was going to ask you, do you believe in miracles?
I'll tell you a story. Kendra, sorry, I know you've heard the story. We had a family friend who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It's 1970s or so. She goes to England, she goes to Germany, she comes to America to find a cure, but no cure. And she can be thankful, when you have a disease that's running wild inside you and is going to take your life. You're profoundly angry and always looking for a way to get rid of this uninvited guest, cancer. And so a friend of ours tells her that there's a guy in India. He's one of those like magical teachers, and he has magical powers. You should go there, and he'll have the power to heal her. So she goes there, thinking that she'll just knock on the door and this guy will open, and she'll tell him her story and she'll be healed. She goes there and there's this huge line, so she waits for about 5, 6, 7, 10 hours, and eventually she gets to see this guy, and the guy looks at her and says, "Yeah, I see it, lay on the ground." So she lays on the ground, and remember, this is like a Middle Eastern Persian woman. We're talking about 1970s, you have a headscarf, And so he asks her to undress. At first she resists, but when you're desperate to have a few more years to your life, you're willing to do whatever. And so she unbuttons her clothes, she removes her bra, and this guy spits on her chest, and with the palm of his hand, he spreads, and his entire front is all wet with spit. And then he says to her, "Button up, get on the plane, go home, you're fine." Comes back to Iran, cancer is gone. Yeah. Hello. Hello. Oh. You guys are far too kind.
This crab and shrimp pasta. Remember?
Thank you. Oh, this is hot. Did you guys want to wait until it cools down?
It's hot.
Well, come on. Well, let me just tell you the story, and then you can kind of reach your own conclusion. How's that? So there are two brothers. One's name is Prometheus. The other is Epimetheus. Prometheus is the guy who had argued that it's not just, it's not fair that the gods keep wisdom up there and leave human beings in complete darkness and ignorance. So what he did was he stole light or wisdom or fire and brought it down here. And when Zeus found out, he was very, very, very angry. And he told Prometheus that there is nothing wrong with you taking wisdom elsewhere. The problem is human beings don't really appreciate wisdom and they wouldn't know how to use it. That's why I rarely take wisdom down. Not very many human beings can know what to do with it. So he punishes Prometheus, and what happens to him is every night he's chained to a cross. At night his chest opens, an eagle comes down, eats his liver, and when the sun rises, the liver comes back, the chest is sewn, and this thing repeats itself over and over and over again, simply because Prometheus wrongly, of course, wanted human beings to be wise. So when Zeus first creates human beings, he creates them naked. And Zeus then says, it's not good for them to be naked. Let me go down there and clothe them. The two brothers volunteer, Epimetheus and Prometheus, and they say, well, give us the stuff and we'll go give it to them. And God gives them, or Zeus gives them, this huge bag, And he says, well, this bag is not just for human beings, but for all created things. So the giraffe gets a long neck, the tiger gets his feathers, I suppose, the chicken gets his speed, and so on and so forth. And when they come to the human being, they realize that the bag is empty, and there is nothing that they have to cover the human being with. And so they go back to Zeus in shame, saying that we have ran out of coverings. So Zeus comes down and says, I will cover human beings myself. I will give them two things: shame and guilt. That's how I will cover them. You know. So just in case Ernest is married to Stephanie, and he looks to his left and he keeps eyeing, Vanna is underage, Amelia, you know, and then you catch him, he's going to be overcome with shame. Shame will cover him. And then shame will push him to reflect, and that reflection will create guilt. And then your job is to forgive him. Okay? So that's what our coverings are, shame and guilt. But that wasn't enough for Zeus. So he says, I need to punish them some more. And because Prometheus was the friend of the human being, he says, well, he's going to get married to this woman whose name is Pandora. And Pandora, she is the Greek Eve, or the Greek Lilith. They're both very curious. They're just a little naughty, you know. So I'm going to give as a gift this box to Pandora. And I will write on the box, do not open. And knowing how curious she is, no doubt she will open it. And so the wedding ceremony is over. Pandora is like opening all these gifts and comes to the last one, which is Zeus's. And on it, it says Pandora's box or Pandora's gift from Zeus. Do not open it. And of course, Pandora does the same, does the exact opposite. She opens it and all the evils of life comes out. There is this last element that was supposed to come out, but the lid shuts. And that last thing was called hope. Hope remains imprisoned in the box. And I think, for me at least, it's something that my own teacher disagreed with me, and I didn't really much care. We had a huge discussion about this. But I think what the Greeks were telling us in a very subtle way was it's always best to live in reality as opposed to hope for a dream that's far away. Because life will play a lot of tricks on you. Hope brings you expectations. It tempts you into believing something that may or may not happen. And you're going to waste a lot of good energy, youthful energy. It's best always to see what's in front of you and just engage with those things. That's what I got from the story. But is it mythology? Is it real? I think we don't have much of a choice except to create stories to survive. I mean, marriage is a beautiful story. Having children is a beautiful story. But the reality of marriage and children are very, very, very different. You know, the fantasy of going to school and getting a master's or a bachelor's or a PhD, it's a great story. Living in that story, going to boring classes, writing ridiculous essays, and reading nonsensical books and trying to memorize the information we're not interested, that's not fun. You know. If someone was to come down to you and say, listen, marriage is a wonderful story, but there are some realities in it, let me tell you what they are. Children are wonderful, but let me tell you what it takes for them to get to be 18 and the toll they'll take on you. It'll take on you. And so what you have is the best of both worlds. You know, you have the world of God filled with dreams and fantasies and hopes and excitements. And then you have the world of Caesar filled with realities. Kids are fun, but money is something that you need. Diapers, formula, a nice house, a nice neighborhood, a private school. These all require money, and God is not going to come down and give them to you. It just takes hard work. If you guys hadn't shown up, they would probably like die of starvation.
Always show up. They're gonna always show up.
Anyone else before we... Elliot. Kendra?
The conflict, trying to live up to my ideal and what was the question?
The question is the difficulties of living to an ideal. Like you want to be Jesus Christ. Something like that, right? Maybe. I think there are two phases. I remember I must have been, I don't know, 12 or 13. I was reading the Dialogues of Plato. It was such a fantastic book for me at such a young age. I was so impressionable, as most kids are. You know, and when I went to India, my father gave me a copy of Sukhanan Ali, Nahjul Balaghe. It's some saint who had given his son some sermons, and so they were written down and eventually turned into a book. It was like 500-600 pages, beautiful book. Let me pause on that and just give you a very, very cheesy and ridiculous response. My son Yusuf loves Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, he's not very good, but the way he stands to kick the ball, the way he heads, the way he jumps, it's like a carbon copy of Cristiano Ronaldo. And he keeps telling me, Dad, look at me, look at me. I say, please leave me alone. Because he sucks. He's not very good. And yet, that's the person he worships. There will come a time where he'll come to realize where he's not even close to what Cristiano is, even at the age of 40. Okay? And so two things can happen. Right now, he has a very inflated image of himself, you know, that he can jump 5 feet high, that he can head like Cristiano. Eventually, when he joins a team and he comes to realize how bad he is, reality is going to slap him. And then he's going to come to realize, you know, he's really not a very good soccer player. And yet, if his love for soccer continues, he will continue to worship Cristiano Ronaldo. And that particular image, despite the fact that he is over there, Cristiano, and my son is down here, if he continues to worship that image will force him to practice every single day. And he will psychologically punish himself every time he has a bad game. And every time he has an off day on the field. And that punishment is being baptized by fire. That he went into the field, he tried to be Cristiano, but he really just stunk as a player. Now he can't sleep, now he can't eat, and now he's very, very, very angry. Now that anger can either paralyze him, where he says, I just quit the sport, or it can inspire him to say, I can do better. It's always good to hang out with people who are much better than you in any craft that you enjoy, whether it's writing. There was a TV show, it's called Boston Legal with Alan Shore, with James Spader and William Shatner. It had, I think, 5 or 6 seasons. Really, really a nice show about lawyers and a law firm, and it was funny and serious. It dealt with all the current issues. Uh, and James Spader, he's an enormously talented actor. And you know, when you keep watching Boston Legal day after day after day after day, what you realize is this is a man who speaks articulately, elegantly, creatively. His mannerism, his body language, just the way everything about, you know, this guy on that show, it's just remarkable. And so when you become addicted to the show, what will happen is you want to mimic everything that he does. And it's good. It makes you better. Or you could, you know, hang out with the Justin Timberlakes and the Snoop Dogs. You could worship them. So it really depends on who the object of your affection is, really. Yes, Nico, you look bored. Yeah, well, I'm bored. Anyone else? Sorry, Kendra, that's all I can do right now. That's it? No one else? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do you do philosophy? Almost every other course they teach like an application, but how is what's you just philosophize? You know, is the doing of philosophy just teaching it? How is it? It just seems like it just lives up here, and there's no physical manifestation. Help me understand it better.
There is a Persian prophet by the name of Zarathustra. The Jewish tradition, Judaism, before their encounter with the Zoroastrian tradition, they didn't believe in heaven or hell. They didn't believe that you in fact have a soul that comes out when you die and stands before God, and God is there to kind of just judge you whether you will enter heaven or hell or whatever. They had a place called Sheol. Once you die, you just go into this house of darkness and dust, and then you disappear. That's what the Jewish tradition was initially. So when you read the book of Job, for example, he doesn't want anything in afterlife because there is no afterlife. He wants things to be done right now while he's alive. So the Persian prophet Zoroaster had 3 steps to human evolution. Okay. So these are the 3 stages you go through. The first is thinking. To be able to think well. In Buddhism, it's called right thinking. So the way it usually works for us is that you base your life on a set of assumptions given to you by your surrounding, your parents, world of advertisement, your friends, going to school, reading the Bible, all those things. And you assume that this is what you do and you can call it thinking, but it's not. Okay? You've basically been programmed into saying certain things, looking at life in a certain way, and you're basically a robot without really knowing. Other people have just planted ideas inside you. And what you're doing is you're reacting to life events. Okay? If you happen to be a Jew, for example, and someone slaps you, you will slap them back, an eye for an eye. If you happen to be a Christian, someone slaps you, you turn the other cheek. Okay? And these are just reactions, and you do react because of the things implanted inside you. There comes a point, going back to the midlife crisis scenario, where you realize that everything you have done your entire life has been flawed or wrong. That, going back to what Rhett was talking about, reincarnation, that you always end up in the same place. And ending up in the same place is not fun. You know, it's like you dump a man, you heal from the breakup, you go out on a date, you get into a relationship, 2 years later you realize it's just the same man with a different body. Then you dump that person, you go out with another guy after a few years, it's the same guy with a different body. Okay? You keep repeating the past mistakes because that's what your habit is. Okay? And you keep reinforcing it, not only by action, but emotional and psychological narratives, that you keep feeding the stuff by choosing the same person over and over and over and over again. So Zarathustra had argued, or Zoroaster had argued, it takes a long time for people to learn how to think. And that's the job of a parent. You know, you have two sets of parents. The first set of parents is in the business of taking care of your physical life, giving you food, giving you shelter, giving you clothing. That's all they can do. And they're far too close, they're far too intimate for you to listen to them. I mean, no one's going to listen to their dad or their mom. You know, for every child, their parent is an idiot or a jerk or a nerd. You know, and the best story you'll find in the Gospel is the prodigal son. Okay, that's what children do to their parents. Okay, a mother knows how difficult life is and how difficult it is to find a good man, but keeps telling her daughter, this is not a good man for you. You're too young for this stuff. But the daughter says, Mom, what the hell do you know? Okay, and repeats the mistake. And it's going to take this young woman 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years to figure out how wise her mother was. Okay. The other set of your parents are the ones who give you the ability to think well about things. Now, those are difficult to find. We are not the sort of animals who receive advice well. We don't follow people who demand things from us. It's just too much. So think, right thinking. That's the first step. That in itself takes a few lifetimes to be able to think properly about stuff. Going back to the Four Noble Truths, the first one. When you enter into any relationship, you know, take a shower, wear nice makeup, wear nice outfit, go out to a party. Just know that at a certain point you'll get exhausted. You're doing all this work and eventually you'll get exhausted. The party will sicken you and you'll come back home. And you won't really care about the party anymore or the friends. Everything turns out that way, but it's really difficult to see the birth, life, and the death of every single event you walk into. It's just tough work. It takes a lot of energy. You know, I mean, that's what what's his name? Robin Williams. Every time someone is nominated for the Oscars or something, you know, he's just holding an empty glass. You know, because he knows that should there be some liquid in this glass and should we swallow, take a sip, it goes back, you know, 5 or 6 months of being sober. You know, so it takes a lot of work and there's lots of things out there that will tempt you into going back to the place of comfort, the habits, what's familiar. Now, like any art, I think thinking is like learning how to play the piano. It takes a long time to learn how to play the piano as it takes a long time to learn how to think. Now, if you want to learn how to play the piano, you need a teacher. If you're interested in learning how to think, you need a teacher. If you look at the Gospels, Jesus is there for one reason, to teach people how to think. But before you're able to think, you have to feel. Let's say that, I don't know. Anyway, so once you have done enough work and you have become proficient in the art of thinking, then you become pregnant. What you have is your ability to observe, to become aware, to be mindful, to also feel everything that you see. And then you have the ability to think and process, break things down, process them, understand them. Now you have a lot of emotions and insights and wisdom about you inside. You're pregnant. And so at a certain point, you need to go through labor. And that gets you to the second stage, which is speech. Most people just talk to talk. And if you don't know how to think, whatever you say is just nonsense. Now, when you open your mouth, and again, now you're entering this new stage and it's a new craft. You know how to think well, but you don't know how to speak the stuff you think about. You don't know how to express with language your emotions and your thoughts. There was a guy, he's Austrian, his name is Ludwig Wittgenstein. He was mostly depressed in life. An English philosopher took an interest in him, and he really rescued him from committing suicide. He had argued that the entire problems for human beings lies in language, our inability to speak about things that impact us, live inside us. When we open our mouth to ask a question, to express who and what we are, it always comes out wrong. And so language is the thing that creates fragmentation. I mean, consider for a moment all the things I'm saying. Well, you have a past, I have a past. When I speak about ideas, a good amount of my past is involved in it. When you receive the ideas, a good amount of your past is involved in it. You're never going to understand what I'm saying. What you will do is you will contaminate my speech with your past. It's no longer mine, it's no longer my ideas, it's not even my intentions, it's not the narrative I'm talking about. This is yours now. And when you go home and you talk about this class to your students, you're not really talking about me, my ideas, or this class. It's just your impressions. Okay. And so what Ludwig Wittgenstein had argued is that if you can kind of just get rid of all the garbage, trash them from language, then maybe you can find some freedom. Now, speech. For those of us in this class who've ever suffered any pain, breakup, someone dies and you're in a grieving mode, whatever it is that you have lost, try to put those in language. You realize that, well, you have a good amount of intense emotions inside you and you want to put them in language, but language is a crude vehicle. It's very small and doesn't fit language. And so after a while, frustration comes to you, and at a certain point you become angry. The volume of your voice goes up. Can't you understand me, God damn it? Okay? And then you just become mute. You will no longer say anything simply because you realize that you're not yet proficient in expressing what lives inside you. Okay? If you don't give up, you keep repeating yourself over and over and over again. Consider someone like Dave Chappelle or Cat Williams. Not so much Cat because he has a funny tone of voice, but Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle, I don't find him to be a funny human being. What I do find him to be is a very observant human being who looks at life very closely and most often doesn't like what he sees. And like a good prophet comes to the stage and says, okay, how can I make people interested? And he doesn't do this like consciously. I think it's just his gift, where there is a good amount of seriousness, a good amount of humor, and some profanities here and there that what usually happens for comedians, unfortunately, is that people pay too much attention to the filth and not enough attention to the seriousness of it. It's a story given to us by Soren Kierkegaard, where a clown comes on the stage and shouts and screams that the theater is on fire, get out. And he becomes more animated and he becomes louder and louder. And people think that this is just part of his acting. But because he had a clown face, nobody believed him, so they all burnt and died. Now, what's going to happen when you want to express yourself, especially if you have some valuable stuff living inside you? You will first be overcome with a good amount of emotions. Emotions don't fit language well. People will begin to misunderstand you. You become frustrated. You may give up, you may not give up. Okay? There comes a point after maybe 5 or 10 years of try, all of a sudden, magic will happen. And this, like any other sports, like any other learning how to play a good musical instruments, this new craft of yours, which is expressing what lives inside you, after 5-10 years, all of a sudden you realize now you can express what lives inside you in a very eloquent way. Now, the way you are able to express yourself articulately and eloquently, you need a background. Read a lot of books. Have a lot of useless conversations. Write a good amount in your journal, because you need tools. And when it comes to communication, the tools are language, ideas, concepts. And you need a lot of practice. And you need to fail many times. And if you happen to be an introvert, you're going to be shy, you're going to be reserved, and just in case you fumble, you're going to beat yourself up. There are lots of moving parts to this. Then you realize you're tired of thinking about stuff, you're tired of talking about stuff, and you've done both really well. Then comes the last and final stage, which is, can you put your thoughts and your words into action? You think well about love, you speak well about love. Now go into a relationship, just see how it is now. And you realize that when you try to bring the things that are up here into the real world, it's very challenging. It's one thing to write about old age, but getting old, very differently. It's one thing to speak and write about love, but falling in love and being broken by love and all the conflicts that begin to all of a sudden come to the surface, it's tough. It's easy to talk about overcoming an addiction, and to write about it. But to actually live that life, it's too much anguish, And so, that's why they're in that particular order. Before you can become a social activist, think about things the right way. Look at society, look at politics, look at the limitations and capacities that you have. Ask yourself, what exactly is in your power to fix? What can't you fix? Know your limitations well, okay? And then eventually the stuff that lives inside you demands an audience. And if you can't speak properly about things, you're going to lose consider this class, for example. We started with 50 people. The reason why it's chopped down to about 20, 25 is because I don't really speak well about these ideas. And so people come to the class, they sit, they say, well, this guy fumbles quite a bit. Maybe I should drop the class and take this class with someone who's a bit more serious, who can speak better. So yeah. So think well, speak well, and act well, in that particular order.
So what does the Christians have the Bible and Muslims have the Quran? What do Jewish people?
The Jews have the Old Testament.
The Old Testament.
Yeah.
The Old Testament is basically the Bible, or just is it a?
Yeah, but there are lots of politics involved, and eventually they realize that since Abraham is the father of Jews and the Christians, maybe these two books should marry one another. Yeah. But you also need to, some of the authors of the New Testament use the Old Testament to prove that Jesus is the David that they were waiting for. He is in fact the Messiah.
Jesus is the Messiah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Nico.
Yeah.
How do you say your name? Nico.
I think that creativity is something that can be learned, or some people are just more creative than others, and that's part of our personality.
So, Because people have different capacities, okay? Someone has a capacity for a tiny cup of creativity. Someone has a capacity for a gallon of creativity, someone 50 gallons, and someone's entire life is just one of creativity. Okay, so people have different capacities, and that capacity will determine how much creativity lives inside them and how well it can be expressed. Okay, that's number one. The second part has to do with some people are born very creative, just born to be creative. Some people envy those who are creative and mimic them and become creative in their own rights. Some people are organically creative and some people learn how to be creative. I don't draw. I'm awful at drawing, but I'm sure that if I was to focus and spend 2 years of my life focused on sketching and drawing, I could be relatively okay. Okay, but I'm not natural at it. Okay, now, some people have hidden creativities, but because of their life, that always remains dormant, unless a Messiah or someone who is privileged enough to give them a lending hand can give them some rest from the brutalities of life. They take some creativity and yanks them out. Okay. If I was to give you examples of creativity within the context of the ideas we've been talking about the past few weeks, I would say the following. Moses and Jesus are both very, very, very creative. But Moses' creativity is held hostage because of his life and because of the people surrounding him and because of his past. Okay? Jesus, on the other hand, no. You know, from a very, very young age, he knows that there is something wrong with him. There is something off about him, that he has qualities and attributes that other people don't. And at the age of 12, he follows his intuition and he just walks away from the whole thing. He's just creative. And when he comes back, he doesn't give us laws. He's just a very creative guy. You ask him a question, well, let me tell you a story. You know? I mean, even what he does to the laws of Moses. I mean, Beatitudes in the Gospel of Matthew, for example, is the 10 Commandments. Okay, but he does it in a very, very creative way. Moses, on the other hand, he has the potential to be creative, but that potential needs to be yanked out. How is it yanked out? Well, he comes to realize that he is not really who other people say he is. That he was born a Hebrew and he needs to go away into the desert, become formless, become empty, eventually going seeing this God, and God forms him. He comes back and now is creative. So, and if I was to borrow from Leo Tolstoy, I would say the following. All creativities need to be educational. And to educate means to bring out. And why would you want to bring something out? Because it's been imprisoned, because it's hidden, because it's been forgotten, because it's too frightening to look at it. Yeah. Different people, different capacities. Yes, okay. What do you mean? A grown man like you, nothing?
I mean, it's something that has nothing to do with this.
Okay, what is it about?
It's having deja vu right now.
Oh yeah, what about?
Just, I don't know, looking down on my work and looking up.
You and I were walking around the lake holding hands?
No.
Okay. Okay, anyone else? No one?
I get the creative side because I think I have creative abilities and people think I'm weird. Some of the things that I say, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I
Well,
can't explain it.
Yeah, all creative people are a little nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I get it. That speaks to me.
yeah.
And you know, 'cause whether it's good or bad, if I tell someone something, they go, oh no, then you know, they think I'm just talking.
Well,
And I'm thinking I'm serious, and they think, oh well.
because creative people don't really know where their creation comes about. They become a mystery to themselves. They're mostly introverted, and they live a very, very lonely life, even if they're married and have children. So good luck.
But if I feel your energy and I tell you something about yourself, people always say no. That's not true.
Yeah, we had a president here on
That is
campus.
true. I'm telling you about
Talk to
yourself.
about. Yeah.
People never take it in and say, oh, well, thank you, I didn't know that.
Elijah?
So, like, language. So we should always just assume that what we're saying
Is wrong.
well, I wouldn't say wrong, but is being perceived.
No, it's just wrong. It's wrong.
But is it wrong because of our perceptions are different?
Do you have desires? Yes. Do you have ambitions? Yes. Do you have a past? Yes. Do you live in America? Yes. Do you have a culture? Is there a narrative? Yes. Is there a certain way you look at yourself? Yes. Do you have certain emotions that a white person doesn't? Yes. All those things are true. Do you have the tools to process them properly? Some things you can, most things you can't. But because your imagination, this is something that Rene Descartes, the 17th century philosopher, had talked about. He was French. He had argued that there are two forces inside us, your ability to understand and your ability to imagine. Imagination is not imprisoned. Imagination does not live in chains. Imagination is free, it's unbound, it can go wherever. You can close your eyes and picture yourself having two horns and a tail. It doesn't really matter. Your imaginations can do that for you. Understanding, on the other hand, it has to do with your experience, and all human experiences are limited. I am limited in certain ways, you're limited in other ways, but we're always limited. What usually happens is imagination grows bigger, understanding remains still. And somehow imagination contaminates our assumptions about understanding. You assume that just because you can imagine big things, you can also understand big things, complicated things. And it's not true. But because imagination contaminates the way you think about things, you also assume that you can also understand complicated stuff. You don't understand love. You just don't. Now, because you're not going to buy that, what you're going to do is you're going to fall in love, you will get married, and then comes a third stage of Zoroastrian tradition, which is now your concepts are going to be challenged by the realities of life. And then you will see how well you understand it. Understanding love is not just a set of emotions, it's also being able to be mindful, being able to be aware, knowing your lines, certain lines not to be crossed and certain lines ought to be crossed. I mean, these are things that takes a long, long time to learn. You know, one of the wonderful things about people of color, you, me, and it doesn't mean that Caucasians don't have heroes. There is Superman, there is Batman, there is Wonder Woman. So white folks have their own heroes. They live in the movies, and black folks and brown folks have like real heroes, okay? Now, Jesus Christ, control yourself. Now, so one of the things that, and again, one of the nice things about having real heroes is that for people of color, their lives are really, really hard. I'm not talking about the Carlton folks. I'm not talking about the Shahs of Tehran or Persians. That's a show on TV now. Okay, I'm talking about people who struggle in life. You know, people who are pushed to the footnotes. And so eventually, out of this poverty, a hero comes to the surface and begins to seek justice for all of us. Okay, and then you begin to look at their lives, and you realize that they've had a tremendous amount of struggle. Perfect example, Malcolm X. I mean, his life was not easy. How he became what he became, that's like magic. That's like Moses. You know, not so much Jesus, but Moses, where he has to go, he lives his life, you know, and then all of a sudden his desert life kicks in, and then he has to reevaluate who he is, what he is, and then he comes back. Okay. One of the things that you and I can learn from the life of, you know, heroes is that first they assume that they know. Then something happens when they realize they don't know. Then they go through all the struggle to figure out a few things. And the few things they do realize, they know. Then they put what they know into language and they give it to us. And they realize, man, this is frustrating. I thought that all I need to do is go somewhere, become wise, come back, tell people, and people will just embrace me. They will love me. But no, that's not the way it works. And they get to the next stage that yes, wisdom is nice, wisdom is fun, but it's not going to be received well. Why? Because wisdom goes against life. Philosophy goes against life. Reflection goes against life. We are creatures who are ought to react to things. If I am broken by love, I will react, I will cry, I will scream, I will go to a boxing ring and hit someone. That's how human beings function. Going against life means the following. I am broken by love, I sit. I ask, I reflect. Why did I choose this person? How did this happen? What is love? Who is love? When is love? This is not what people do. Malcolm X forces you to think. But for you to think, you need to sit. And if you want to sit and think, you must have inner silence. Your past doesn't matter. Your skin color doesn't matter. You're in the business of thinking, man, reflecting, understanding. Nobody's gonna give a shit about your past. Nobody cares about your skin color. The only thing you ought to do and do well is think. And that's tough. So when you ask me what philosophy is, it goes against life. The unexamined life is not worth living. A tiny little saying by Socrates. It's a great saying. But when you actually try to apply it, it ruins you. It ruins your friendships. And if you happen to be in a relationship, it ruins that relationship. You know. Yes, Makai.
I don't know if the question asked.
Oh, Makai, you know, a man your age always asks good questions.
Yeah, sure. Yes. How do you gain inner silence? Be able to like ask these questions or to really comprehend or really go on like a process of understanding who you are or who somebody else is.
So my framing gun broke a couple days ago. It's a DeWalt. I bought it for $283 3 years ago. And right now, it's $485. Can you believe that? Now, as I'm trying to fix some things around the house, I need a nail gun, but I'm not willing to fork out $500 for a nail gun. I'd rather go somewhere, steal one. I'm still trying to figure that out. Okay. Now, as long as my nail gun is broke, the idea of inner silence, that's not going to happen. So what I've been doing, taking this nail gun apart to see what lives inside, if I can figure out the reason as to why it's not working. Once I figure out why it's not working and I'm able to put it back together in the proper way, now I can go back doing what I need to do, which is, build a house. Now I can have inner silence. So here is, I think, what I'm trying to suggest. Right now you're a robot. Okay, you take classes, you have a job, you have a companion, and you just flow in life. All of a sudden, there is an interruption, a disturbance. Something about you just falls apart. Whether physically, you get sick, okay, or emotionally, you're disturbed, or intellectually, you want to ask for a raise from your boss, but you want to figure out how to best put it in language so he's not offended, okay? Or you happen to have a spiritual crisis. Whatever the case may be, the only way you're forced to sit with pain is a disturbance. And whenever you're disturbed, it means that your life, you have lost some power in life. And the loss of power makes you poor. Blessed are those who are poor. Okay? For they shall inherit the earth. Now, what is interesting about that verse is every poverty is a blessing. If that poverty can get you to a place of privilege, richness. If you're broke in poverty and that poverty takes you to church and you can cry and scream and you can imagine that God can hear you, you will walk out of church in a great amount of comfort and solace. That someone out there listened to you, held you, and now you're lighter as you walk home. Okay. So something about you is broke. Now you want to put that brokenness back together. You want to heal yourself. To heal yourself, well, you need tools. If you have the flu, well, you need NyQuil. You need a couple days off from work so you can get some bed rest. You need a companion who can make you some chicken noodle soup. Okay? Once you have the tools, then you got to figure out how to best use those tools in regards to the places about you that's broken. Then you need to take some time to allow those tools to do their magic. Once you're healed, that's your resting place. Right now, where you are in life, you have no reason to have inner silence. You don't deserve it. You haven't earned it. Right now, you need a lot of chaos. You need to go to school. You need to be around people like me, idiots. And you need to be bullied. That's what the world does. Every time you want to be calm and in harmony, the world is going to steal that from you. And you have no power right now. You got no education, you got no money, you got no wife, you got no kids, you have no house, you don't have a community. There is no resting place. Now, granted, once in a while you go to your parents' house for some food, wonderful. Once in a while you have some friends, but resting place in a way where the world beats you. Epictetus is the Stoic philosopher. And Stoicism is basically this. Do not store your treasures down here. This is before Jesus. Do not store your treasures down here because the world is going to take them. Your age is going to take them. Time is going to take them. Boredom is going to take them. Okay, that's what the world does. So he has a master. He has an owner. So one day this owner keeps twisting his arm. Epictetus doesn't scream. Just looks to his master and says, listen, if you keep twisting my arm will break. And if it breaks, I can't tame your horses, and I can't wash your dishes, and I can't broom your house. But if it gives you pleasure to break my arm, then go ahead. Now, this is a guy who has the power to control pain, to not care so much about his physical body. Inner silence is like playing the music, as I said again. You know, every question that people ask that has to do with some of this like self-improvement stuff, it is really like a musical instrument that's going to take you 5, 10, 15, 20 years time. But you have to be focused. This idea that the third commandment in the Jewish tradition Keep Sabbath. What is Sabbath? Sabbath is a resting place. It's, what is that? Compass? Is that compass? You do in geometry? So you have one leg that's just stationary. Then you have another leg that's just moving around, right? So you need to be that compass, that leg that knows the center. I mean, you need to know what it means to be black in America. And you need to express that without emotions. And you need to know that you're going to run into some bastards once in a while who will say all the awful things to you. But you can't lose your center. That's your Sabbath. You have a great understanding about yourself and you won't allow anyone to disrupt that. Because the moment you allow anyone to disrupt that, it means that you give yourself less value and you give them more value. How long is that going to take? A long time. If you want to go into a romantic relationship, make sure you love yourself. You know who you are. Because just in case the other person leaves, you won't give a shit as much. I mean, these are like crafts that takes years to master. You know, the idea of not having enough money and say, I want to live in peace. Are you kidding me? You know, get a job, save some money, quit spending your money on ridiculous things. And when you have 60, 70, 80,000 in a savings account, just in case your landlord is a piece of shit and wants to evict you, you won't give a shit. You have enough money in your savings account, you can go anywhere, do anything. But, you know, when you're poor physically, emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually, you can't ask for rest. Acceptance is a very, very difficult place to get to. I mean, ask any one of us in this class who are like really, really old. I mean, Stephanie's old, Ernest is old, Deborah is a little old, and I'm old. These are like difficult. I'm sorry. No, you are like forever young, of course. And the point is, you know, you begin to lose abilities. You walk slower, you think slower, you talk slower, you fart more, you shit less, you know. I mean, these are, forgive the graphics, you know, these are things that will take time for you to accept. I mean, my mom keeps calling me every single day. Are you still like building a house? Yeah, Mom. You know, you're not 20. I say, thank you, Mom. And what she's saying is, listen, I'm 80. I've been there. I've done that. Stop being such an idiot. Take it easy. Do I listen? No. Why? Because I'm like the prodigal son. I waste. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Abi. Are you well? Please. Does that? Yeah, man. Yeah.
Like a tip on how to seal that framing nailer?
It's not jammed. It may be the springs in the back, but the back doesn't come out.
If you get frustrated trying to fix it, they have the same one for sale still. We'll buy one, put yours in the box, and
Oh, they don't make this anymore. Yeah. I'm from the Middle East. You know, the only way you survive in the Middle East is by lying, cheating, stealing, conning, you know.
Also deliver on Facebook Marketplace.
The what?
Also deliver on Facebook Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace?
A little bit cheaper.
Huh.
Or you can say, I only got $100, but you sell this to me for $100. And it's like a willing deal.
Or have somebody else.
No, next semester I'm going to ask if anybody works at Home Depot.
Go next door and just ask if you can borrow one.
No. No. Yeah, Elijah. Nico, you have something? Elijah.
So, like, the Native Americans, what did they do to farm their, like, I guess, like, inner peace, their
Oh, no. You know, you have Some people invade your land and 10 minutes later they leave. Some people invade your land, occupy your land, and then they leave after like 5 years. Some people invade your land, occupy your land, and settle. When they settle, the land becomes theirs. You still remember your ancestors and what happened to them, even though you've been in this country. There's a good amount of African American history that lives inside you that should someone say the wrong thing to you, you will explode. Because, your life is relatively good. You have a job, you have a companion, you go to school, you have some money in your pocket, and yet there is this history, there is this past that's unresolved. Native Americans, there is nothing about them that's resolved. And the thing you need to understand about settlers is the following. When someone invades and occupies and settles, and if they happen to be the more powerful group, they're going to take your language away. They're going to take your rituals away. They're going to take your religion away. They're going to make you feel bad for who and what you are and what you've believed in for the past many, many thousands of years. That is what the dominant culture does, and they do it really, really well. I mean, imagine if you go out with an abusive woman. Your companion, let's just say she's abusive. What is she going to do? Well, she's going to put you down for everything you believe in, where you've come from, who your friends are, what you enjoy, what gives you pleasure. That's abusive. And why does she do that? And why are you with her? You love her. Love makes you weak. And because you're weak, you will submit. And because you submit to someone who's abusive, they will dominate you. And in their domination, they will crush you. And before you know it, you have nothing. You have no past and you can't relate to it. You have no language. You have no rituals. There are no beliefs. You don't know what to worship. Everything has been destroyed. All you are is just this anger. But because you've been socialized where you repress the anger, once in a while it does come up. And going back to Nico's question, if you happen to be the creative type, you don't become Mike Tyson. You become James Baldwin. Native Americans don't have anything. I mean, if you've been paying attention to the politics, they're trying to write in the history books that 2020 election, or 2020, was won by Donald Trump, but he was just cheated out. I mean, the point I'm trying to, anyways. So, Abi, anything? Yeah.
About reincarnation, like someone returns from the previous life to a current life.
I haven't met anyone. I have difficulties believing if I was to run into someone who said, I know you from past life. You guys were here a little later. I belonged to a couple of cults when I was much younger and very much like you, questing after, figuring out who I am, what I am, all those things, what I need to do with my life. There was a woman, she had come to the States from Canada, and they had to flee from Iran because their members were being executed by the government. So she was 50. When I met her, I think I was like 19. She looks at me, and after like half hour, I was singing, and when everything was done, she comes to me and she says, you and I have met in the previous life. I said, oh? She says, yes. And it used to be ABCD. And the funny thing about this stuff is, When people say nice things to you about you, you like it. So you encourage them to go on with their nonsense. So after 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, she looks at me and she says, you know, in our previous life, we were married. And that's how we attained perfection. And we had a beautiful life. And I think you should talk with your mom, to your mom about us getting married again in this life. I said, Parveen, you're like 50. I'm 19. The fuck are you talking about? And I slapped her a couple of times thinking that she was like drunk or something, but she wasn't. She was actually very sober. And eventually I came to, I mean, I don't know if she was right or not, but the idea of marrying someone like, you know, like 40 years older than I am, 30 years, you know, she won't be very good in bed. She won't be very good outside of the bed. She just won't be good, period. You know, how the hell am I going to tell my mom, I'm going to marry someone who's like older than you are? So, so do I believe in reincarnation? No. Is it useful? No. Can you have deja vus? That you've met someone before? Yeah. Can you even foretell the future a little bit? Yeah. Is that going to be helpful? No, I think it's a moment of inspiration. You know, you can get excited. You can think some funny stuff about yourself and about God and about your relationship with God or mysteries of life. But those are just temporary. They have a very, very short lifespan. And you can be in that mode until Ernest says, where's my egg sandwich? And then it's kind of like a slap in the face. You'll sober up, find yourself in the kitchen. So, yeah. Why do you ask?
I think Ernest was a ninja in his previous life.
Huh.
He's very sneaky. Not in a disrespectful way. Not in a disrespectful way.
Well, Stephanie, you know, he's only sneaky because you're so controlling. I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. Well, you know.
Like he can be in the room and I'll focus somewhere else and look back and he's gone. He's like really good with that. Or the opposite. I'll look this way and bam, he's there. And he does it a lot. I think he was a ninja. You know how they get on rooftops and do things and climb walls? I think if he had a previous life.
Like he was a samurai
Yes.
in the 15th century.
Yes.
And in this life, he's just like a black American. That's just a very mild transformation, no? He's like Tom Cruise in a different style. All right. Ernest, I think you've got a lot of compliments tonight. Yeah. I mean, a ninja? That's amazing.
He likes a lot of Asian food and a lot of spices. I don't know.
Can you make maybe something Asian next week? Really? You can make like chow mein, kung pao chicken?
That's all he eats. A lot of rice. It's odd for black men. I don't know.
That is true. Is it brown rice or white rice?
I just love rice.
But is it white rice more or brown rice more?
Whatever rice you put in front of him.
I mean, if it's white rice, that's questionable. Brown rice, it's more of his tone.
Our son doesn't like Asian food because he's
He's what?
ate like,
Oh, he's ate too much of it.
yeah.
Well, Ernest, we're getting to know a good deal about you.
But I do think if you got a past life.
Do you have lots of Asian friends?
No.
Do you speak any of the Asian languages? You just... A black man who likes Asian stuff.
Did I disappear and reappear like it is?
Oh,
I'll show you all this costume.
Jesus. costumes. There's a place by the lake. They sell costumes. No, I mean ninja costumes.
He has them already.
Let's move on. Abi, anything?
That's it.
The teacher being able to, at some point, remove someone's student's history. Is that a permanent state?
So if we were to break down, I don't know what time it is, but let's just, it's what? Okay, good. You have like an hour. Inside this bucket of history lives events. Events are stories. Okay, stories impact you on a physical level, on an emotional level, an intellectual level, and they also give you some spiritual identity if you happen to be somewhat religious, in a religious environment. That is what history is. Also, in that history, you have fears, you have traumas, you have ambitions, you have desires. Okay. History is a collection of past. It can be positive, it can be negative. But history creates an identity, and that's solid. Now, your question is, can a teacher remove that? And once removed, is it permanent or is it temporary?
Awesome.
What do you mean? Oh, you're young, you're always hungry. So, can I tell you, and you need to remind me of your question again because I'll probably forget. I'm just going to go somewhere else for a moment. The guy who did my triple bypass, his name was Brian Kane, I think Kaiser, San Francisco. And while I was, laying on my deathbed almost, he looks at me and says, Amir, there's a house in Berkeley. It's about 12 million. You think I should buy it? I don't know. 12 million? Who has $12 million? So I asked him what made him interested in this particular science. And he said, when I was 12, I wanted to do all sorts of things, but I was walking my father, and as he was holding my hand, all of a sudden he fell to the ground and died. And then the autopsy revealed that he had some heart condition. And because I loved my father, I decided to go to school and work on hearts. That's what I wanted to do. And so what you have is a tiny kid. And what do children want to do? The children want to have fun. Okay? And this traumatic experience takes place in his life. And teachers are traumatic experiences, encountering a teacher. Okay? Now, it only becomes traumatic if they grow on you. And if you begin to like them, intensely like them, become infatuated by them, and eventually fall in love with them. I mean, that's how things need to go. Okay? If there is no love, there is no teacher-student relationship. It doesn't work. Okay? And so what happened to Brian Kane is that he realized that he no longer wants to go around bicycling. He no longer wants to hang out with his friends. All he wants to do is sit somewhere and read books about the human heart and some of the diseases that impacts it. And then he went to school. And then his own kids are now in medical schools. And you realize that even though children, by design, are meant to go out there and have lots of fun, break things, break into shops, steal things, not this kid. because of this experience. And so the history and his friendships and all the things he was interested in before going through the experience, once this experience happened, everything about him was deleted. He became empty. And that emptiness was filled by the loss of his father and his desire to somehow see his father's resurrection by fixing other people. So every time he works on a patient, he imagines his father. Now, if I was to again put your question in story form, I would say the following. The more you have, if you're like 40 and you're married and you got kids, if you have a lot of stuff, there is lots of cleaning to do, and that's too much. Too much for the teacher and too much on the student. Because every time you want to leave something to which you're attached, you are attached to your kids, you are a mother, you are a wife, so you are attached to your husband. You guys are planning for your future. That's a lot of stuff inside you. So every time some of those things are being removed, there is going to be a great amount of conflict inside you. That conflict is going to be, the anxiety, the frustration, the confusion, the anger. It's just too much. The less you have, which means the younger you are, and the less you have, it means that there is less trash inside you to get rid of. And by trash, I don't mean like bad stuff, okay? Now, where was I? Sorry, what was your question, Abi?
You would ask, you had said that.
Oh yeah, identity. Yeah. Well, let me just do it in a simple way. Is that okay? Can I tell you a story first? Why are you guys laughing? Our ninja, oh, he's laughing too. Okay. I forget the story. Let me just do it this way. It's a hypothetical. There is me and there is Elijah, would you say? Or there is me and there is you. Since it's your question, let's just involve you. I come to class and you're sitting there as a student. The first element that you need is attraction. Attraction, as I walk in, something about you, there's an antenna that goes up and senses something. You don't know what it is, but something about you rises to attention. And it's a mystery, and it's magical. And I don't know why it happens, but it happens. Okay? Like anything else in life, it's a seed. It can be crushed, or it can be nourished, and it can grow and blossom. I haven't yet opened my mouth. You haven't heard the tone of my voice. You haven't heard how well or how ill I speak about ideas. I open my mouth. And you realize that you enjoy the tone of my voice. For whatever the reasons are, it soothes you. Okay? And now something happens to you emotionally. Okay? You pay attention, you sit upright, and you begin to pay attention. And you want to raise your hand, but something has overcome you, even though you're usually an extrovert and you talk quite a bit. For some strange reason, You want to remain invisible. ترسم که عشق در گم ما پرده در شود وین راز سر به مهر به عالم سمر شود. That ترسم که عشق, I'm afraid that the tears may roll down my cheeks because I've held this secret inside me for such a long time, and when I begin to cry, my secrets will be revealed. And what are those secrets? That here you are attracted, like, infatuated, obsessed, loved, but you're far too reserved, far too shy, far too respectful to speak of it. The only language you have is tears. But you know that the person that you're in love with can understand that those tears are not because you have a stomachache, not because you have a toothache, you are in love. Okay? Now, let's just say you come to class, your life is full, your plate is full. Okay? You have a good life. You just came to this class for 3 units, let's just say. But all of a sudden, things begin to take place inside you, and you don't know what they are, and they frighten you, and they create a good amount of conflict. And you impose all these moral codes. No, this is not right. He's my professor. I shouldn't be feeling. I should be thinking. You say all those things, and they're right. They're part of you being socialized in a relatively healthy way. And there comes a point where you won't really care about those things. You'll go to the 4th floor, where my office is, room 402. You're about to knock on the door. But all of a sudden, your sense of morality kicks in. I'm married, got 2 kids. I don't really have very many questions. Why do I want to go and talk to him? So you get back on the elevator, you go down and you call your husband. But there's a crack inside you now. Okay? And as our interaction becomes more and more and more, I begin to occupy more space inside you. Okay? When you go home with more of me than before. Now, remember, you came to this class not having any cracks. Now you're leaving with a lot of different cracks. Who created those cracks? I did. If I know that there are cracks inside you and those cracks are caused by this class, then I become responsible in taking care of them. And the way I take care of them is I invite you to the house. Often. You can come to the office anytime you wish. You can call, text, email anytime you wish. Because now that your history has gone away, you become homeless. Who made you homeless? I did. Who is not responsible, obligated to give you a home? I am. So I will do whatever I can to give you as much comfort as possible. Okay? The more we interact, you're going to get more of my desires inside you. You want to be more like me and less like you. And after a while, you will go to your community and say, listen, I think I want to quit my job, go back to school, or keep my job, get an online degree in philosophy. Amir said, if I get a degree in philosophy, he'll get me a job, and I think he's going to be true to his words. Okay. Now, your family doesn't know what the hell is going on. All they know is that, well, this is a woman who's had an interesting life. She's a great mom, a great wife, but now she has this other interest, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then there comes a point where you do get a job, it's part-time, then you begin to apply for full-time positions, and eventually you'll get one. And all of a sudden, you realize most of your life now revolves around ideas.